Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to this roundtable on municipalities. Very delighted to have everybody here. I'll introduce the panelists in a minute. Apologies for a bit of a late start, but we think this is a very exciting topic, very relevant for the response. This is organized jointly by UNDP and UN Habitat. So I'd just like to take a moment to introduce the panelists, and I'll introduce them in the order that they'll be presenting. For the moment, we will start with Ms. Szilard, the National Coordinator of the Host Community Support Project from the Ministry of Social Affairs here in Jordan. Then we're going to have, my apologies. And then we're going to move to the mayor of the municipality of Hosha, Jordan. Mr. Mohammed Al-Khaldi will follow second. One of the things that I noticed on the panel, despite the title focusing on municipalities, we have one mayor, which in some ways might be a good thing, because I think if we had more, there would be a lot more dissatisfaction and expressed about the kind of response we've seen over the past 4 years. So perhaps it was a good move in the end. Then we'll have George Antoun from Fricska in Lebanon, followed by Luca, Renda, the country director for UNDP Lebanon, followed by Dyfed Aubrey, who is the who is the regional director for my own organization, and that's why I got his title wrong. He's the regional director for UN Habitat based in Cairo. And finally, we'll have Olivier Bouda offer some wrap-up comments from the EU delegation here in Jordan. So I think the focus really should be on the participants. So we'll let that process start immediately with Szilard from Lebanon. As you have. There is everyone should have the headsets for the simultaneous interpretation.
صباح الخير أو مساء الخير. نتحدث اليوم عن التنمية لتعزيز القدرة على مواجهة الأزمات في ظل تحديات كبيرة تعاني منها المجتمعات المضيفة، خاصة مع امتداد الأزمة السورية التي تجاوزت مرحلة الاستجابة الفورية لحالة طارئة إلى التخطيط نحو استجابة مستدامة. تلعب البلديات الدور الرئيسي في تنفيذها. وواقع الحال أن تأثير الأزمة السورية على لبنان بلغ مستوى غير مسبوق في تاريخ حالات الطوارئ المرتبطة بالنازحين. في عام 2012 كان عدد النازحين السوريين المسجل لدى UNHCR ما يقارب 32800 نازح سوري، في حين أن هذا العدد ارتفع إلى ما يقارب 1,500,000 نازح سوري خلال العام 2015 بين مسجل وغير مسجل. وهذا ما يمثل زيادة 25% من نسبة الحجم السكاني. لذا يعتبر لبنان من بين الدول ذات أعلى كثافة سكانية في العالم، أي ما يفوق 400 شخص لكل كيلومتر مربع. هذا التدفق الكبير للنازحين السوريين شكل ضغطا هائلا على لبنان وشعبه، ولا سيما في المناطق الأكثر فقرا والتي تشهد النسبة الأعلى لتواجد النازحين. 251 منطقة مستضيفة للنازحين السوريين موزعة على كافة الأراضي اللبنانية. تجدر الإشارة إلى أن عدد النازحين السوريين تعدى في بعض القرى عدد السكان اللبنانيين. مع استمرار الأزمة السورية وارتفاع عدد النازحين، يخضع قطاع الخدمات الأساسية لضغط هائل يضع البلديات والإدارات والمؤسسات العامة في الخط الأمامي لمواجهة تداعياته على كافة الأصعد، من مياه، كهرباء، الصرف الصحي، إدارة النفايات، فرص العمل، التعليم والرعاية الصحية. لذا بادرت وزارة الشؤون الاجتماعية والUNDP في لبنان إلى تعزيز المرونة والاستقرار من خلال مشروع دعم المجتمعات اللبنانية المضيفة، والذي يهدف إلى أولاً تعزيز قدرات الجهات الفاعلة المحلية والوطنية على تقييم الاحتياجات والمخاطر والاستجابة لها في إطار مقاربة قائمة على مشاركة المجتمع ومراعية للنزاعات. ثانياً دعم الخدمات الأساسية في المجتمعات المضيفة. ثالثاً زيادة فرص العمل. ورابعاً التخفيف من حدة النزاعات وتحسين الاستقرار الاجتماعي. في إطار هذه المبادرة تم اعتماد منهجية جديدة، وهي منهجية خريطة المخاطر والموارد، وهي منهجية تشاركية بين السلطة المحلية والمجتمع المضيف لتحديد الاحتياجات والمشاكل والموارد المتاحة وغير المتاحة وترتيب أولوياتها للاستجابة المناسبة. وفي خط موازن أنشئت لجنة تقنية برئاسة وزارة الشؤون الاجتماعية تتألف من أعضاء أساسيين من مكتب رئاسة مجلس الوزراء، وزارة الداخلية والبلديات، مجلس الإنماء والإعمار، ووزارة الشؤون الاجتماعية، إضافة إلى وجود المانحين كأعضاء في اللجنة ووزارات أخرى معنية وفق المشاريع المقترحة. من مهامها مراجعة المشاريع والموافقة عليها وفق الأولويات الناتجة عن خارطة المخاطر والموارد، وضمن المبادئ التوجيهية الوطنية العامة، تفادياً لأي ازدواجية محتملة في المشاريع المنفذة، مما أوجد آلية تنسيق وحوار فريدة من نوعها بين الوزارات المعنية في الاستجابة للأزمة السورية على الصعيد الوطني وليس فقط على الصعيد المحلي. بعد تنفيذ المرحلة الأولى من هذا المشروع خلال بين عام 2013 و2015 تم استهداف 114 بلدية عبر 326 مشروع. بها سلايد عرضت بعض الصور كنماذج عن بعض المشاريع اللي تم تنفيذها. تعلمنا من هذه التجربة كثيرا عن دور البلديات في تعزيز مرونة المجتمعات المحلية وكيفية تعزيز قدراتها والوصول إلى مستوى أعلى من التنمية. ومن أهم الدروس المستفادة التي نقدمها اليوم كتوصيات هي: أولا إيلاء الأهمية لإنشاء مجموعات عمل تمثل كافة الأطراف في المجتمع المحلي للمشاركة مع البلدية في وضع فهم مشترك لواقع البلدة واحتياجاتها، وهذا من شأنه دفع الناس في المجتمع لتبني هذا التصور للواقع، ويساعد على قبول ودعم المشاريع التي تنفذها البلدية لمصلحة مجتمعها المضيف. ثانياً العمل على مساعدة البلديات في اعتماد أداة موحدة للتخطيط، مثال على ذلك خطة العمل البلدي المتعددة القطاعات، وهذا من شأنه أن يدعم جهوزية البلديات في عرضها لحاجات منطقتها واقتراح الحلول المناسبة لها في إطار شامل وموحد. ثالثاً ضرورة العمل على ربط ودعم التكامل في الخدمات المقدمة ما بين الإدارات والمؤسسات العامة والبلدية. رابعاً تطوير قدرات البلديات على إدارة المشاريع وتقييمها، ووضع نظام خاص للرصد والتقييم والمراقبة ولمواكبة التغييرات الديناميكية في المجتمع المحلي. خامساً الحث على إيجاد برامج تعزز مفهوم المسؤولية المجتمعية والشراكة بين القطاع العام والخاص والجمعيات الأهلية لدعم التنمية الاقتصادية المحلية من خلال مشاريع استثمارية تلبي حاجات السوق المحلي. في الختام نقول إن جعل المدن والمستوطنات البشرية شاملة للجميع وآمنة وقادرة على الصمود ومستدامة هو هدف من أهداف التنمية المستدامة، يستحق المناقشة الجدية في لبنان لوضع تصور حول آليات تحقيقه، آخذين بعين الاعتبار الدور المحوري للبلديات في كونها المحرك الأساسي لعجلة بناء المرونة والتنمية. شكرا.
Yes, thanks very much, Szilard Gali from Lebanon, talking about the role of municipalities and the need for support. Our next speaker is the mayor from Hosha Municipality.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أنا محمد الخالدي رئيس بلدية حوشة. أود أن أتكلم نبذة بسيطة عن بلدية حوشة. طبعا هي بلدية حوشة الهم اللي تحمله بلدية حوشة تحمل جميع البلديات في المنطقة، يعني في المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية، وخاصة في يعني محافظات الشمال. احنا بلدية حوشة تقع على الشريط الحدودي مع سوريا، تقريبا 14 كيلو متر مربع. مساحة البلدية عندنا 70 كيلو متر. عدد سكان البلدية تقريبا يعني 70,000. عندنا ما يقارب من 20 ل 25,000 لاجئين سوريين. سبب كثرة اللاجئين السوريين في منطقتنا هي القرب العشائري اللي يربط يعني بين أبناء السكان، يعني المنطقة عندنا من أبناء عشائر، في ربط بينهم، ربط عشائري على مستوى الجمهورية السورية، ففي صلة قرابة وفي صلة دم بينهم. فلهذا السبب كان يعني أكثر اللجوء السوري في بلدية حوشة ومنطقته. البلديات بشكل عام في المملكة تحمل هم كبير بالنسبة للجوء السوري. اللجوء السوري يجون السوريين، يعني خليني أنا أتكلم بصراحة وبوضوح وجدية تامة في هذا الموضوع، لأن الموضوع الآن في البلديات لا يتحمل أنه يعني البلديات تقوم في مراعاة أو تلبية احتياجات إخواننا اللاجئين السوريين. إخوان بصراحة أول ما جو السوريين كان الشعب الأردني متعاطف جدا، لدرجة قبل أن تفزع يعني المنظمات والدول المانحة وكذا، قاموا الشعب الأردني يعني مقاسمة رغيف العيش بينهم وبين يعني أخوة السوري. كان يوم يجي يقسموا قبل لا تيجي هذا، كان يقسموا الإحرام، اللي عنده حرامين يودي حرام للسوري ويخلي حرام لولاده، اللي عنده كيلو خبز يودي نص كيلو خبز للسوري ويخلي الباقي له. فبعد ما طالت المدة والشعب الأردني، أنا حكيتها بمجلس النواب الأردني وحذرت يعني أنه الآن وصل لدرجة أنه الشعب الأردني عنده ملل حقيقي وزهقان من السوري. كانت عبارة الشعب الأردني أول يقولوا الله يعينهم مساكين، قدر الله صار عليهم. الآن يقولوا متى يروحوا، متى ينقلعوا. هيك هذه اللهجة أنا بحكي حقيقة، متى ينقلعوا، عوفونا بلادنا، قرفناهم. هاي اللهجة اللي الآن موجودة عند الشعب الأردني. وقد أنه ما يعجب الناس أنه الواحد يحكي الصحيح والحقيقة، ولكن الحقيقة هي مفتاح أي حل، أي مشكلة بدها حل. هو الآن في الحقيقة تكون يعني أنه نكون نحط في المثل البدوي يقول نحط يعني الإصبع على الوجع، ونحل إن شاء الله إحنا وياكم في هذه الندوة المباركة، يعني نحل المشاكل ونحاول لنا. البلديات يا أخوان بصفة يعني كاملة، البلديات عاجزة أن تقدم، وخاصة أنا أحكي عن البلديات، جميع البلديات بحال واحدة، وخاصة بلديتنا يعني الآن إحنا عاجزين نقدم أي خدمة للمواطن السوري وحتى للمواطن المستضيف أو للشعب الأردني. اللي صار إجا دعم، بس هذا الدعم اللي إجا لا يكفي، يعني ولا يغطي حاجة إلى 20 أو 25% حتى أكون صادق. دخلت علينا من يعني الشعب السوري هو بالنهاية شعب يعني مسلم، شعب واجبنا احنا كأردنيين انه نستضيفه، وواجبنا انه نقدم الرعاية له. ولكن مثل ما قالوا العين بصيرة والإيد قصيرة، احنا كأردنيين وكحكومة أردنية اتوقع ما تقدر تقدم خدمات للاجئين السوريين نهائيا. والسبب انه البلديات، ما في بلدية بالمملكة الا الان عندها عجز او عجز كبير بالموازنة، لحتى راتب الموظفين كانوا ياخذوا البلديات من صندوق التنمية او من بنك التنمية على الحساب المكشوف. يعني بلديات فقيرة جدا، او حتى اذا في كلمة اكثر من فقيرة نقدر نصرف لهذه البلديات. الآن في عندنا يا أخوان، يعني وقد أكون إني أطيل، بس سامحوني أنا إذا أطيل من الهم اللي أنا يعني ممكن إني أوصله النخبة من أبناء العالم، النخبة من، أنا ودي أسمي هذا يعني اللقاء نخبة من يعني الرسائل الإنسانية، إنه الآن يتطلعوا لبلدياتنا ويتطلعوا لكذا، إنه بعين من الجد وعين من يعني تحمل المسؤولية، لأنه بغض النظر أن السوريين أو الأردن، هذا السوري اللي تشرد من بلاده هو بالأصل إنسان، ويجب أن نحترم إنسانيته، ويجب أن نأمن له يعني هذه ظروف قدر الله، يجوز اليوم عند السوريين بكرة تصير بأي دولة. فإحنا ديننا الحنيف يعني، والإسلام يقول إنه المسلم يعني كالجسد الواحد، فإحنا الآن مجبورين إنه نتحمل السوريين، ومجبورين إنه نقدم لهم الرعاية كرؤساء بلديات وكمجتمع العالم، يعني نقدم لهم العناية الكاملة. ولكن الآن لو نجي نتساءل يعني سؤال، أنا الآن كرئيس بلدية حوشة، أنا الآن ما عندي أي إمكانية، حتى الدول المانحة اللي بعثت مساعدات كانت مساعداتها مشروطة، يعني الآن قالوا البنية التحتية إشي جميل، إنه أي رئيس بلدية إنه يشوف عنده الطرق، عنده المياه، عنده الصرف الصحي، إنه يكون يعني منظر البلد يكون جميل. ولكن أنا الآن أنت كدولة مانحة لما تنطيني بتقول لي اشتغل بالبنية التحتية، أنا السؤال اللي بدي أتساءله، لمتى نكون عالة؟ الآن احنا كبلديات لمتى نكون عالة؟ انت مساعدني شكرا، كسر خيرك، ما قصرت، بس خليني انا الآن كرئيس بلدية لا تحددني بنوع المساعدة اللي انا بدي اقدمه، لكن انطيني فرصة اني الآن انا اساعدك على الشعب او على اللاجئين السوريين. اذا يكون عندي مشاريع استثمارية، شو المانع اني انا اقدمه ويصير هذا الدخل يدر على البلدية، والبلدية من خلال هذه المشاريع تقدر تقدم للاجئين السوريين، وتقدر تقدم للمجتمع المستضيف. في يعني أكثر من حلول لهذه المنطقة، يعني لهذا الحل. الآن يعني في منظمات خلينا نطلع أو حطت إيدها ومشت معنا وساعدتنا مشكورة، يعني نحس إنه كان في الطرح تبعهم يوم يجيني على سبيل المثال UNDP، تجيني الميرسي كول، المنحة الإيطالية دكتور أمجد يعني ممثل عنهم ميرسي كول UNDP، ونتباحث في الميدان أو في مكاتبنا أو في الدولة المدنية، تحس إن هذه المنظمات جاية تقدم خدمة حقيقية وتساعدك. ولكن في منظمات مع كل أسف، وما أحب أسمي احتراما يعني لجهودهم اللي قدموها وما كانت موفقة، هي يعني عندنا كم منظمة هي عبارة عن تشتغل بس دراسات، ولا شفنا منا على الأرض أي شيء. يدفعوا تقريبا ألوف الدنانير على دراسة، قام اجتماع مع المجلس المحلي، اجتماع مع المجلس الحكومي، دراسة على المشاريع هاي، جمعنا اليوم لو نحسب كلفة الدراسات هي تساوي مشروع لأحد البلديات. الكلفة الحقيقية لو كانت يعني نحسبها تساوي مشروع، أو أنا أقول يجوز تغطي 3-4 بلديات بالشمال، تسوي لها يجوز اكتفاء ذاتي. فأنا يعني أشكر UNDP والميرسي كول حقيقة، والمنحة الإيطالية بلديتي يعني حطوا تقريبا بصمة، يعني حسيت انه هذه المنظمات الثلاثة يعني في مجال يعني للمساعدة. المنحة الإيطالية ساوت عندنا مشروع كنت أنا أتمناه، ساوت عندنا نادي الطفل جمعنا فيه إن شاء الله، يعني الخطة تبعته أن نجمع بين الأطفال الأردنيين والسوريين، لأني مثل ما تكلمت أنا أول انه الان صار عند المواطن الاردني احباط وصار كره للمواطن السوري. احنا الان دورنا كبلديات نساوي ائتلاف، نساوي يعني ندمج المجتمعين الاردني والسوري مع بعض، لانه مثل ما قلت انا المجتمع السوري كمان مجتمع انسان والله يعينه على حاله. فالان يجب انه نساوي دراسه. زارنا يعني المنحه الايطاليه فكانت هذه الفكره فتوفقنا فيها. هو كان عندنا حتى باقل التكاليف يعني مش هذاك المبالغ، كان عندنا مبنى تقريبا يعني بده ترميم، رممناه وضبطناه والان يعني موعودين انه بالاشاف كذا والبلديه تقوم على ادارته. الان لما يكونوا الاطفال السوريين مع الاطفال الاردنيين في يعني خلينا نقول بنادي طفل يجمع مشاعرهم، يجمع يعني انسجام يكون بينهم، اتوقع بعد سنه سنتين يشوف الطفل الاردني يشوف السوري انه هذا اخوه وهذا حق عليه انه يقوم يعني من طفولته. فانتم يعني احنا يجوز وصلنا يعني المراحل المتقدمه وكذا من العمر وكذا، فالناس يعني الان حتى يعني خوي الطفوله خوي الصبا يظل له معزه خاصه بالقلب. فهذا الشيء لابد يعني انه الان من الدول المانحه انه يحطهم بايدينهم يعني على حقيقه الامر. يا اخوان الدراسه اللي نشوفه على الورق مو مثل اللي نشوفه على الواقع. قد يكون الكاتب يخطئ ويصيب، ولكن اذا كانت الدراسه بالميدان حقيقيه الان نقدر نحط ايدنا على الوجع. عندنا الان كرؤساء بلديات في المناطق العشائريه، رئيس البلديه بالاردن وخاصه عند البدو عند العشائر، خليني اسولف، هو رئيس البلديه مسؤول من الالف الى الياء، مسؤول يخطب العروس، يطل على المريض، يطل على المراه اللي تخلف لازم يروح عليها ويبارك لها. هذا هي قدرنا يعني احنا كرؤساء بلديات، لانه بالنهايه رئيس البلديه مو تعيين، هو رئيس البلديه اللي وضعه الشعب وبانتخاب. فرئيس البلديه اللي يكون وصل لرئيس البلديه هو اللي يكون حاصل اكثر شعبيه في منطقته، وهو من يعني يكون اكثر واحد وصل على الشعب. فاحنا كرؤساء بلديات اتوقع يعني عرف اخونا في اكثر من جزء. انا رئيس البلديه الوحيد اللي جيت، ترى معظم البلديات ما عندها رضا، خليني انا اكون صادق، كل رؤساء البلديات ما عندهم رضا. بس انا قلت لهم رايح انا اروح واوصل الهم، يعني بلاش انه ما نحضر كلنا، فالافضل انه واحد مننا يروح ويحكي باسم رؤساء البلديات عن همهم. انا اذا بدي اتكلم عن البلديات انا مستعد اقف 4 ساعات امام الستيج وما اخلص، ولكن احتراما للوقت واحتراما لمشاعر اخواننا احنا الان نختصر يعني الطلبات. البلديات بحاجه الى دعم من الدول، والدعم اللي وصل مثل ما اسلفت ما يعني يصل 25%، ويجب من الدول المانحه ونترجاهم انهم الان يقوموا على مشاريع استثماريه وانتاجيه للبلديات حتى نتمكن اقل ما فيها من يعني ولو شيء بسيط انه نخدم حالنا، يعني نخدم حالنا. احنا رؤساء بلديات نشكر UNDP، انا مكتبي فرشوا لي والUNDP يعني كنت بدي احطهم على سطور قبل او على كردة يقعدوا عليه، ما كان عندنا شيء. فاشكر يعني الUNDP هم اللي فرشوا على مستوى الحق الابسط. احنا بلديات منكوبه معدومه ما عندنا شيء نهائيا، ما عندنا شيء. وانا ما ودي اطيل ولاني اقف بهذا الموقف اني متسول لا سمح الله ولا شحات، ولكن انا اقول انه حق الاردن على الدول المانحه وحق اللاجئين السوريين هذول على الدول المانحه، ويجب اني احط الدول المانحه في حقيقه الامر. احط الدول المانحه في حقيقه الامر. واخيرا السلام عليكم ورحمه الله، واسمحوا لي على الاطاله.
Thank you, Mayor Al-Khalidi from the Municipality of Hosha for a very powerful, and I think as he mentioned himself, speaking for a lot of municipalities that feel that they are not getting the kind of support they need to be able to respond effectively to what has been a very protracted crisis. Our next speaker is Georges Antoun from Mercy Corps in Lebanon. Thank you.
Get the presentation. Presentation is not giving, so please. Well, good afternoon, and it's a pleasure and honor to be here today. I was told that I was instructed actually to finish in less than 5 minutes. I'll try my best. I have 9 slides and I'll go quickly through them, see how much I can get to you, and then we'll open it to discussion if there are any questions about it. First, let me start by saying that usually when we talk about resilience, we talk about it in the context of natural disasters, earthquakes, how we attend to the needs of people in the aftermath of earthquakes, recurring droughts, or how to protect citizens from typhoons. But the next generation of resilience thinking is basically about finding transformative capacities to improve the situation of those vulnerable in conflict-related crises. These crises evolve, they're not static, and they're not only about addressing immediate needs, but also to address future needs. Resilience challenges humanitarian development and local actors to plan, integrate, and build longer-term strategies. And resilience also brings a commitment to build lasting local capacity. By promoting more inclusive and localized decision-making, we believe that it will be possible to improve service delivery, it will increase transparency and responsiveness of local government, and it improves legitimacy with a broader system of enhanced local governance, also encompassing civil society, which is important. Our theory of change actually ties resilience to the tenet of good governance. And we think and we hope and believe that this crisis could be an opportunity to help Lebanon, because my presentation is specifically about Lebanon, to continue to push in its own systematic transformation. There are many short and medium-term interventions that are being done now by different actors. Some of them provide technical advisors to municipalities, some of them help in community mobilization, some place staffing within various government structures. And these interventions are really great. I mean, they're very successful, they're very needed. Without them, we think that not much could be done. But the problem is that they do not lead to systematic transformation and depend on availability of donor funding. And once the funding dries up, then we face problems. Some of the other interventions that we and others have been trying to do is working with municipalities, for example, to work on tax mapping and geographic information system, try to assess their operational and financial systems. And the main reason for this is for the municipalities to better understand the catchment area for different services and improve their planning for the future. Other interventions was working with unions of municipalities and municipalities themselves. And it started with having them come together, talk about their needs in the areas, ask or invite officials and government representatives to the meetings, then inviting UN agencies and NGOs, international and national, so that everyone sits around the round table, they discuss the needs and they connect with each other in order to understand more the needs in the areas. We believe that increasing the knowledge helps a lot, because when a municipality doesn't know how the process works in a certain ministry, they're missing a lot. When they don't know how to approach an international donor to get the funding that they need, they are missing a lot. So the purpose of this is just to bring all the players together, let them think, strategize, and assess the needs, and try to streamline the resources. All this has come from, this is based on previous governance work that we've done, and also the concept of linking social capital, which I will talk about it in a moment. Now, if you look at the governance structure right now, there are two positions. Lebanon is divided to muhafazat, governorates, and there are two positions, and each governorate or muhafaza is divided into a number of kazas, districts. The two positions are appointed by the government. And then if you look at the Gaza level, which is, there are about 26 of them in Lebanon, each one of them, they have one or more union of municipalities. Some of them, they have municipalities that are very close to the union, but they're not part of the union. There are towns and villages that do not have municipalities at all, which means they don't have any representation, and the needs may be as great as in other places. So the municipalities are elected while the other positions are appointed by the government. So what we think is that we have worked a lot with municipalities, and there's a lot to do. And we work with unions of municipalities to build their capacity and help them attend to the needs. But we believe that we need to take this a step further. We need to have more local voices and more people sitting together and coordinating with each other. So the idea is to create a certain council at the Gaza level, which includes all the people who are appointed by the government, the people who are elected, engage the civil society and NGOs in this, and have this all of them work together and assess the needs. As we said, they can bring experts when there is a need for that. And we believe that by doing this, it will enhance inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability. Now, social capital, which I talked about, we believe that municipalities are a key element in building social capital and social cohesion, which the mayor also talked about what's happening in Jordan right now. It's very similar also in Lebanon. Host communities are really tired and the tension is always there. So this social capital builds the resilience by providing people and communities greater networks of resources to help absorb, adapt, transform with shocks and stresses. We did a study with UNDP lately in Lebanon to look at resilience. And one of the main reasons was to look at certain entry points where we can help in building resilience and by building on social capital, especially women and youth. Social cohesion and social capital, they work together. Each one of them, if it gets weak, it weakens the other, or if it's strong, it strengthens the other. So we look at social capital as the asset or the resource that we use, while social cohesion is the state of the community or the country. In conclusion, we believe that improved governance structures help municipalities build social capital, which also helps in getting things better, helping in social cohesion more. Now, but to do this, the municipalities need a stable source of funding. They cannot work on always living on donor money. There needs to be something to change in the governance so that they can become independent in a way and generate their own funding. They need to have to retain their administrative staff. And in the end, we believe that this is a shared responsibility between governments, between donors, between municipalities, local people living in a certain community, and this is the only way to support permanent transformation and perpetual resilience. Thank you.
Thanks, George Antoun from Mercy Corps in Lebanon, for highlighting a couple of important points related to governance and the role of the importance of independent sources of revenue and predictable sources of revenue for local authorities. Our next speaker is also from Lebanon, Luca Renda, the country director for UNDP. Luca.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will use some of my IT skills here to change presentation. Good afternoon. I am very pleased to be here today. My presentation should be really seen as a natural continuation of the presentation made by Madame Szilard Ali of the Ministry of Social Affairs about this partnership that we have developed in Lebanon between UNDP and the government institution that has been assigned to be the focal point for the response to the Syrian crisis. But it's also an echo to the words of the mayor of Osher, who has so vividly described the challenging situation faced by the municipality and the central role they play in the response and the management of the current situation, as well as the words of George, with whom UNDP and Mercy Corps we have work together to develop a framework, approach of resilience approach to respond to the current situation in Lebanon. I will start, I want to focus my short intervention on clarifying a bit along the lines of George, what does it mean to build resilience in municipalities? What is it that we're trying to achieve? We have definitely a short-term objective in our program, which is to keep stability, to prevent conflict between communities, particularly because, as Suhair said, the majority of the Syrian refugees in Lebanon live in the poorest communities of Lebanon. In these 251 communities live 87% of the refugees and 67% of the poorest Lebanese. So we have a potentially very dangerous situation that will create tension. So one of the first objectives that we have in our program is to keep stability, prevent conflict, and make sure that the host communities feel that there is an international response that also caters to their needs. But there is a deeper objective to that. It's not only to mitigate the impact of the crisis, but to leave something more long-lasting, something that is, as it was said before, looks at not only the coping or mechanism or the absorbing mechanism, but also to the transformation. So it's a transformative agenda we're looking at. Of course, we need to make sure that we mitigate the impact of the crisis. We need to make sure that communities that are hosting refugees see also their immediate needs addressed. But at the same time, if we were only staying at this level, we're only probably looking at an intervention that don't create a lasting transformation, but only a temporary change that then will probably go back to the business as usual when the crisis is over. But no, with Ministry of Social Affairs, we're aiming at something a bit more ambitious than that. And that's why we have developed this methodology of participatory planning at the local level, the definition of priorities. And we have developed interventions that go look at infrastructure, services, but also at the soft part of it, capacity building on conflict mediation, conflict prevention, conflict management. So it's a two-pronged approach that converge around certain tangible projects, but this particular project are as important as the process that surround them. So what does it mean, basically, transformative capacity? I want to tell you a bit about the research program that is associated to the host community support program. It's something that we are developing together with Dyfed and the AUB University, the University of Birmingham, and the Ministry of Social Affairs, and as well as the World Bank. That we look at the experience of supporting municipality in Lebanon and Jordan is applying a methodology that is called research in action. What we are using is focus groups as well as surveys, and we do it on a repeated basis in targeted municipalities to see what is the real impact of our program. We know, for example, that we have certain infrastructure project that needs to be completed. So if we're looking at improving access to water, or if you're looking at improving the wastewater system, or if you're looking at supporting livelihoods for agricultural cooperatives or fishermen, this is the immediate tangible project, and of course we need to make sure that those projects are completed on time and people see the immediate benefit. But there's something else. We want to see if we are changing people's perception, for example, about the role of the municipality. We want to see if we are changing people's perception about the situation. We want to see if we are creating a new perception about the legitimacy and the demands that can be exerted on the municipality to look for answer. And we want to also see whether people are more inclined to cooperate among each other. So it's changing the way things are done, going from the business as usual to a new way of doing things that, if the program is sustained over time, could become a new the new standard, let's say. And this is really the resilience approach. As George said, looking at the crisis as an opportunity to change for the good, to produce positive change. One of the consequences of the extreme situation that Lebanon is living right now is that when you have over 1 million registered refugees, and probably many more if you don't take into account those who are not registered, you have and you have this population concentrated, as we saw before, mostly in 250 localities. You have a situation where the role of the local authority becomes absolutely fundamental. The central government also, because of certain political dynamics in Lebanon now, has relatively limited room for intervention, room for maneuver. The big burden of the response now is on the local authorities, is on the municipalities, is on the school principals, is on the director of the primary health medical center, is on the director of the social development center, or the local staff of the Ministry of Social Affairs. Is this fabric at the local level that we need to support? Is this absolutely fundamental? The backbone of the response and the backbone of stability is at the local level. So changing the way things are done at the local level, creating, empowering local government, local authorities, making sure that there is a new pact of trust between the city and accountability between the citizens and the local authority is an absolutely critical objective of any response. And we need to also know, are we achieving that or not? I want to show you a couple of slides about what is it that we're trying to measure. And for example, we use a methodology called sense maker that somehow try to ask people on a frequent basis about how they feel about certain things. We're asking them to tell certain stories, and from their story and narrative extract some of the perception. You see on the left the baseline evaluation before the program was started and after. When you see blue dots, it means that the people are favorable about something, and when you see red dots, you mean they're not favorable about something. And you can see how, somehow before and after there's a difference. There's much more here. Because there's a movement towards this side of the triangle. Meaning people seem to be more inclined to cooperate with each other after this whole process of engagement and after the process of planning together, etc. This is a very important one about the role of municipality. Before, the great majority of the people, they perceive the municipality are very slow to take action. Well, after the intervention, this is just measuring, it's the first measure. We will continue to do this on a regular basis. You see how many people then show, how many people move towards the point of the triangle that say that the municipality is able to make a difference and is trusted to take the right action. But this is very important also because the people are looking at the municipality as a source of solution, and they are maybe less inclined to look at other sources of solution, such as informal groups or groups that might have political parties or groups that are confessional, etc. So supporting the elected government, the elected institution is definitely a long-term objective of this program. We have many of these. We have, for example, the perception of people for the Lebanese vis-a-vis the Syrian refugees. We have the perception of the people about the future, and all of them show positive indications. So it seems that we have evidence that this kind of intervention are actually not only achieving the short-term impact we had set, but also they are contributing at a long-lasting impact if they are continuing on a sustained basis. Some preliminary funding of this analysis. First of all, one important thing: where we have intervened in the municipality, we have observed, we have seen that the social tension between Lebanese and Syrians have actually reduced. They're not only stable, but they have actually reduced. The municipalities have been increasingly trusted to listen to grievances by within the population of the municipality. And municipalities themselves are re-envisioning their role to stretch to wider service provision, to brokering and resolving social tensions. So there is a sort of a growing awareness from the side of the mayors and the municipal authorities about their role that they can play, not only in the what used to be before the crisis, but with the crisis, an acceleration, let's say, of the importance of the municipality. People felt they could approach the municipality with a problem. The role of municipalities goes beyond infrastructure and service delivery to play a stronger role in social stability. And here's a key role played by these committees that together the MOSA UNDP have been promoting now in 68 municipalities that are sometimes mixed between Lebanese and Syrian. Most of the time are actually just Lebanese, but they are looking at precisely supporting and promoting social stability. They're looking at the social side, the cultural side, and this experience has shown that these committees are actually making a big difference. To conclude, we are, of course, aware of the fact that if these programs are not sustained in the future, we can go probably easily back to business. And George was mentioning that the municipality needs to have a sustained support, and this has to continue over several years to make sure that these new dynamics, this new role, this new way of doing things can become the new standard. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Luca, from UNDP, Country Director, UNDP Lebanon, for highlighting some issues related to accountability, the need for good information, as well as the transformational aspect and the long-term nature of what is happening today in Lebanon. I'll pass the microphone over to David Aubrey, the Regional Director for UN Habitat from Cairo. Thanks, David.
Thank you very much. We're all very familiar with the situation. It is very much an urban crisis. The majority of refugees have moved to towns and cities, and the majority of internally displaced people within Syria have also moved between towns and cities, but also within towns and cities. And as we've been developing profiles of cities, it's become very evident that not only are people moving between towns and between countries, but within cities and within towns. And we found that in some neighborhoods have increased their population by at least 3 times, particularly inside Syria. But also we're hearing about the huge amount of refugees in Lebanon as well as Jordan. They are not evenly spread, but they do concentrate in certain areas. And in those areas we see, as you already know, significant increases in the housing market, increases in competition for jobs, the reduction of availability of services, and the increase of the risk of social tensions. So we are very familiar with the challenge, and local government, the mayors, are really the most accessible face of government within the host communities and to the refugees who have moved to host communities. So as such, they're on a knife edge, and as I've spoken to various mayors in the bordering municipalities with Syria, in both the Jordan and Lebanese sides, they complain about some very common issues. They feel that they have the enormous responsibility, and they have to have solutions. They have to have answers to people who are flooding to their doors. And they're constrained quite often by 3 different areas. One relates to mandate. The citizens don't ask them, do you have the mandate for this? Can you help in this area? No, they just expect them to solve problems. The other thing is the technical capacity, and thirdly, often the financial resources available. When we talk about mandates, probably this is not something that will change in the short term, and probably what's needed before we get to any changes of mandate is that municipalities, mayors, local governments are able to deliver well in what they're already doing. And I think, key then is the financial empowerment. Now, when we talk about the financial empowerment of local government, when we talk about local resources and the availability of more resources to local government, this brings us to a very tricky debate, because we are talking about, many people read this as decentralization, and then there's concern that the central pot is not big enough to begin with, and if we start to devolve it, then what will centralized ministries be able to do? But I think we need to change this discussion to a discussion more of local empowerment. How can local authorities generate more and better resources to be able to implement what is needed on the ground? And this is also challenging. I remember a conversation I had with the mayor of Ramtha when I asked him about increasing local resources. He said, "What, so you want me to tax people? Do you want me to get killed?" And yes, when we're in a volatile and very tense local environment, implementing local taxation is something which we have to be very careful about as well. But there are a range of local financial resources that could potentially be available. And what we think is very important is to diversify local economic base, local revenue base, sorry. And there is land-based finance. When land is converted from agricultural to urban land, it increases in value. It's not necessarily just the owner of that land that should benefit, but that increased value could somehow be shared, and there are instruments to do this. It is possible to create a better business environment within municipalities to attract, the high street, the parking, and the various functions of the high street, to improve the possibility of local businesses, and then to be able to license businesses. There are methodologies of private-public partnership to bring investment in. There are a number of models, and I believe we need to diversify the instruments that we can use to strengthen local revenue. But as we strengthen local revenue, it's also important that there's good financial management. And this, we're in Jordan, we've been looking at municipal credit rating as a baseline. And there is very significant challenges in relation to financial management that could be, which the UN could, or other actors could support, and so that they're able to manage resources more effectively. And then, along with the financial side, the other point that is important to make then is that the citizen accountability, as some of my colleagues have been talking about, is also crucial. And I believe it empowers local governments to be able to get good feedback from their citizens. And so that citizen engagement is something which I think is critical. So I believe the three key areas then of empowering financially local authorities would be the instruments available for generating revenue, the financial management, and also the citizen accountability. Beyond this then, we found as we work with various municipalities is then the capacity to, in various areas, before we start talking about defining projects, is to understand the urban dimension of crisis. Because what we find is that there are strong interrelationships between the demographic change, the local economy, the housing market, and then the availability, the social, how this impacts on social services, the education and health, and how these are also affected by and impact on water, electricity, and sanitation. So these things are very much interrelated. And as we work in more urban areas, it's important that with local government and also us as assistance agencies, we're able to understand better the interrelationships and the interdependencies of sectors within the urban areas. And within that also the geographical catchment of services. And sometimes the garbage is with the municipality, waters with the water ministry and within local catchments, and these catchments don't always sit on top of each other. So we have to understand then the area-based dynamic. So I believe then the thinking then on municipal support needs to be a stronger area-based understanding as well as a multi-sectoral understanding. We heard then also from the mayor the need that he saw of the municipalities to be more in the driving seat, and I believe the coordination needs to bring the mayors into the centre of things. And unfortunately, all too often they are just people that we approach to tick the box, you know, and they really need to be central in the coordination, along with the technical directorates of line ministries, along with the citizens, albeit whether this is through civil society engagement or other forms, as well as then the technical agencies. So, to conclude, and I'll probably run way off my notes, and then also then beyond the coordination and the urban knowledge, then is actual technical capacity to deliver. We find in Lebanon we've had quite a good experience of working with the unions of municipalities, and there we've brought in what's called regional technical officers, which are quite well-trained engineers and technical staff, generally working for the private sector, who are ready to work with the government during the morning and early afternoon and go back to their normal work in the evening. What we've brought in is some really highly skilled teams that work within the unions of municipalities, and as they're implementing their projects, designing projects, identifying the key needs, and implementing, they are then bringing up they are sharing their knowledge with the staff and bringing them up as well. And in fact, we set up some of these in 2006, and they're still in existence now in Lebanon. And a recent example would be the Union of Municipalities Zahrani in South Lebanon, where just in 2015, by being able to undertake the assessments and plan the projects, they've attracted $3 million worth of investment. Some of it has been passed through the unions of municipalities, and some of them have been simply coordinated by the unions of municipalities. So we do believe that this sort of to insert technical capacity does work. Just to conclude then, I think the key points then is to establish urban, multi-sectoral, area-based analysis and coordination system with mayors and technical branches of line ministries in the driving seat, with citizen engagement and the UN and assistance agencies fitting into this. Financial empowerment using a range of revenue systems. In addition to this, improving financial management. And then also the citizen accountability is a key component, as well as the technical assistance as an overall framework. Thank you.
Thanks, David. David Aubrey, Regional Director for UN Habitat. Our last speaker before we open up the floor to questions is Olivier Boudard from the European Union. Then we should have about 30 minutes left for discussion and dialogue afterwards. So Olivier, please, I know we can count on you to send some controversial messages to get the dialogue going. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Szilard. Thank you very much to give me the opportunity to reflect on, I would say, 20 years of work in this region and in protected crisis, and from the angle of municipalities. Just a couple of observations. If I look at the various at the rhetoric that was existing at the outset of the crisis, and the paper that was assembled for this seminar or this regional conference, I see a degradation and especially in the role of the state. And I think if we discuss about resilience in the region, we have to look first at the resilience of the state and the state institutions and the local system. I mean, the paper, I've observed that the paper give a great deal of importance to municipalities in service delivery. I think it is important, but I think we have to look at the reality of municipalities in the region. And it's not a judgment value. I mean, if you look at decentralization in my own country, in France, we started in the 70s. And even lately, we've had a harsh debate in the parliament with the government on the next step of decentralization. So it's not a judgment value. I mean, we know that in the region, the state remains strong, and decentralization is, and of course it's different in Lebanon and Jordan, but decentralization is a process that is in the region at the early stage. So we have to be very careful, I think, in looking at municipalities as the silver bullet to address issues that are faced at the local level, and again, what is valid for Lebanon would be different for Jordan. Municipalities do not operate in a vacuum. They operate in a certain policy environment, and I really encourage. And my talk is really on the international community side, and when I say international community at large. Contrary to my colleague from the talk on Mercy, I don't think we have a shared responsibility, but the responsibility for first and foremost on the international community to build resilience. I have the impression, and looking at again the rhetoric, but also the proposal that has put forward to us as donors, that municipalities are perceived as vehicle for delivering aid, and as such. Of course, we are not looking necessarily at reinforcing capacities and building resilience, because building resilience and reinforcing capacity takes time. And we have a tendency at looking at the ultimate goal of delivering the services, delivering water to the refugees, delivering health services to the host community at the expense of capacity strengthening. Resilience of institutions. It's also important to have a better understanding of the local governance context, talking about municipality, in which we operate. For instance, as I said, in Lebanon, the process of deconcentration has already been initiated in the past 10 to 15 years. It's very nascent in Jordan. There are limits also to the autonomy of municipalities in Jordan, limits that are different in Lebanon. So we have also to be very cautious in trying to administer one-size-fits-all approaches to municipalities in the region. So, as was explained earlier by our colleague from UNDP, the context is complex. The issue of municipal revenues in Jordan is really different from the issues that municipalities in Lebanon face, and we have to start from this understanding. And this is an understanding, a collective knowledge that exists, because there are a number of assessments now we are already 5 years into the crisis. I mean, we receive a number of assessments. So the collective knowledge exists. I think now it's about time to sit around the table, again as international community, and take stock of all these various challenges and build on the accumulated knowledge. Maybe looking further at how to operationalize these principles. There are a number of principles that are put forward in the paper that we all know. I mean, they are being extensively addressed in the international forum on aid effectiveness. I think what is important from my point of view is first and foremost to start from country realities and an understanding of the local governance concept, the policy context, and design response and responsible response, I would say, from understanding of this context. And keeping in mind, there is a principle in the humanitarian field that we use is do no harm. I think it's very important, talking about resilience as well, is that in intervention that we design to support municipalities, but also to support state institutions, is with this in the back of our mind that we should not harm already existing system at local or at national level. To conclude, as I said, I think it's not a shared responsibility. I think it's first and foremost a responsibility from the international community. This crisis is not underfunded, contrary to other crises in the world. We are now 4 years into the crisis. A lot of knowledge has been accumulated, and it was, I think, for the international community also a learning process. I mean, this crisis, as was said, is a urban crisis, a urban protected crisis, in affecting countries, especially in Lebanon and Jordan, that have limited resources, that have had their own structural weaknesses before the crisis. And we have an opportunity, to build better, as some say, but again, starting from this understanding of country realities. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivier. So we have about 30 minutes left, and I think it would be very nice to have some questions from the floor. If people can please raise their hands and introduce themselves and their organization. Please also keep your questions, and please make them questions if possible, short, so that we can have more space for discussion. So again, just introduce yourself and your organization when you're raising your hand. Question at the back to start us off. Thank you. There was a microphone that was roving around.
My name is Ayman. I'm from Jordan Hashemite Charity Organization, and I want to clarify something about the situation in Jordan regarding the Syrian. According to UNHCR records, Jordan is hosting 36 or 34 nationality of refugees. And also we did not close our borders, and the Syrians are most welcome here, and we're still receiving them in Jordan, not as Mr. Khaldi mentioned in his comments. Yes, our sectors are exhausted, and the needs are huge, and all the needs in all sectors have been affected in Jordan response plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Other questions, and if you have something for a specific panelist, please indicate. Yes, there's a question there. Thank you.
Kamal Malhotra, I'm the UN resident coordinator in Turkey and the UNDP resident representative. My question is, it would be useful to know what level of decentralization and autonomy, or, well, maybe that's, decentralization. What level of decentralization exists in Lebanon and Jordan? To what extent can major decisions be made at the local level? That would be helpful to know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So how do you feel comfortable taking that, or? Okay, sure, and I'll just put people on notice perhaps. Okay, any other questions? Then I hope that our colleagues have had a chance to really reflect deeply. Georges, I don't know how you feel about giving some indication of Lebanon. Yeah. And then,
عفوا نرجع للعربي بليز. بما إذا عم نحكي عن اللامركزية، نحن بالتطبيق اللامركزية إلى حدود صراحة، منا لامركزية مطلقة. في عنا لامركزية بالنشاطات، بدراسة الاحتياجات، بالمقاربات، بالتدخلات. عم بحكي أنا على صعيد البلديات وعلى صعيد مؤسسات عامة. بس نحن عم نحكي في عنا نظام دايما عنا مربوط ما بين اللامركزية والمركزية من حيث أخذ القرار النهائي ومن حيث الارتباط بالتمويل. يعني ما عنا كمان استقلالية مالية مطلقة باللامركزية. بس عم بوضح، وهذا قرار يعني على صعيد قانون داخلي. أما من ناحية أي مبادرات، أي مناقشات، أي عمل، فهو فعلا بيكون قائم على مبادرة لامركزية. بتضيف شيء أستاذ جورج؟
Other colleagues? George?
Yeah, about decentralization in Lebanon. Decentralization has been agreed to in 1990 when the Lebanese, after what was called the civil war, agreed in Dyfed in Saudi Arabia. They talked about a decentralization system, and through the years, the last thing we know about it is that there is a draft law in the parliament sitting right now to be debated. What I can say also that decentralization, as far as we know, has been endorsed by all or major political parties in the country, but probably due to the political situation in the country that's been going through, this has not been moved forward. So we think and we believe that decentralization is not an easy road to take, and there are a lot of things to work on as we go. But there should be something that could pave the way for this. If this is what the Lebanese agreed to do, there should be something that could be started and gradually work towards decentralization. Now, definitely the connection between the central government and the local authorities is something very important to work on. But the main thing is that we believe that as the more you bring the decision that affects the daily life of people closer to the base, the better it would be, especially that municipalities are elected by people, and the new law allows, or the draft law I would say, allows for people, because in Lebanon it's a small country, many people are registered in a certain place and they vote. When during election they vote in their areas of origin. But more than 50 to 60% of the population, they live in places where they are not originally from. So this new law allows people who live in a certain area also to cast their vote. So just to give you an example, a certain community that has grown through the years due to civil war and other things in Lebanon, the original population that votes could be up to 1,000 people who vote. But this community would have more than 20,000 people living in it, and all Lebanese. But the 19,000, they don't vote in that municipality. They go and vote in their original villages. So this is why it's a bit complicated, but we believe that something should be done. And this, as we said, the crisis could be taken as an opportunity to work towards this thing. As I mentioned, there has been a lot of good work that has been done with municipalities. We believe that it's better and it's more cost effective now if you bring municipalities through the unions, and those who are not in the unions, also villages who are not represented, all work together, have a plan for the region. And the plan shouldn't be only to address immediate needs that we're facing right now, but also have some plans for economic growth for people to stay, because Lebanese are also leaving. And it's well known that, you know, some of them in the previous roundtable, it's mentioned that some Lebanese are buying Syrian identity cards now to try to ride the wave of migration to Europe. So this is what I can say about decentralization. We hope that we can work towards that, but it's not an easy road to take. Thank you.
Thanks, George. I'd like to ask the mayor if he would like to say a few words about decentralization in Jordan. Okay, we had a lot of comments earlier from the mayor in terms of discussing some of the limits to the assistance received, and I think in a way that it's an important question, because if we're saying on the one hand, as Olivier was mentioning, that this is not an underfunded crisis relative to other crises, and at the same time we have the municipalities and the mayors feeling that they are not the ones actually benefiting in this process, then there is a bit of a gap. Is there someone that would like to take up that issue to try to understand why this gap exists and how we can close it? And I'll just pass it back to Olivier to maybe also reflect a little bit on the Jordan context.
As far as Jordan is concerned, I mean, there have been call for decentralization process back in early 2005 and 2006, but it's only 2 years ago that the government put forward a piece of legislation in motion. So there has been discussion at the Parliament and the Senate for the past 18 months. The law has not yet been promulgated. Basically, the law institutionalized at governorate level advisory councils that were already existing, but those advisory councils, instead of being nominated, would be elected. So that's currently for Jordan the situation. And then the number of responsibility and consultative mandate that would be given to these governorate councils. And as I said, there has been discussion at the Parliament and the Senate, and the law has not been yet promulgated. But there are restrictions. As I said, there are restrictions on the responsibilities that municipality can undertake. There are some ceiling on expenses. There are a number of, as I said, a number of impediments. And what is important, it's not a judgment, it's to understand. It's to understand the context within which municipality operate. And we shouldn't be too over-ambitious as well. I mean, it's true, it's an opportunity to experiment approaches and to pilot approaches, but we have to also be realistic and balance, as I said, the necessity to deliver with the also objective to build resilient institution and system, and it's of course challenging. But we have this knowledge, I think, compared to other crises where this knowledge exists as far as Jordan is concerned. The question, again, is to sit around the table and to initiate also this policy dialogue with the government, which I believe we have initiated in Jordan, but still we can, and because, of course, in the first stage of the crisis, I mean, we also look at the imperative to serve and deliver services, but we know it's a protected crisis, and I repeat, it's the financial assistance is there, so there is an opportunity today to sit and reflect better, because the state of Jordan continue to deliver. I mean, it's a reality. So we have time. I mean, in number of crises, we don't have time. I think in this case, and again, I'm talking from the Jordanian standpoint and not from Lebanon. I think we have time to reflect, because the knowledge is here, the expertise is there. I mean, whether in country, but also in UN agencies or international NGOs and national NGOs. We need a moderator, we need a facilitator to bring this knowledge and to bring a consensus and initiate this policy dialogue.
Thanks, Olivier. And just to add on that, I think one of the trends that we've seen, well, first, it's very difficult to generalize across the region because contexts are so different. I don't think in Lebanon there's a feeling that we have time. I don't think anybody would be saying that. On the other hand, there is the nervousness felt in the region has meant a bit of a pullback in terms of more focus on governorate level and higher level institutions. At the same time, that doesn't enable the municipalities always to improve their delivery capacity or even their ability to deal with the conflicts that are emerging. So we have this tension of, on the one hand, a pull upwards towards a little more centralization, but the needs are only increasing and the services are only more strained. There needs to be some examination of the role of municipalities within this broader tiered structure. And what is the responsibility vis-a-vis governorate level and national level? The focus on municipalities doesn't mean that everybody else, as Olivier says, that municipalities are not a silver bullet. They need to be, the support to them needs to come from many different places, including from below and civil society. There was a question from the floor, and I think one in the back? No, just right here. Okay, near the front. Is there a microphone? We have a self-help approach to the microphone.
My question applies maybe to all the countries that are affected. I'm wondering how much have or are central governments responding in a way under this emergency situation to temporarily or on a pilot basis enable their municipalities to take on more responsibilities. Are they, of course, as we know, the laws are restrictive and have not given sufficient power to municipalities or sufficient resources to municipalities. But are we seeing in any of the countries a government response that has been a little bit more flexible and supporting the affected municipalities to deal better? Or are the municipalities facing a rigid legal framework that is not responsive to this situation?
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to raise a question while we have panelists kind of think about responses? Okay, then shall we start perhaps with Lebanon?
نحن وزارة الشؤون الاجتماعية بما أنه هي الوزارة المعنية بإدارة الملف أو الاستجابة للأزمة السورية، صراحة طريقة العمل كانت كثير مهمة من ناحية المقاربة أو الربط بين الإدارة المركزية والإدارة المحلية، وكيفية التنسيق هون بين الوزارات كلهم على الصعيد المركزي والوطني، وكيف كمان يدعموا المؤسسات العامة والإدارات العامة إضافة للبلديات بتأدية دورهم بتلبية الحاجات على المستوى المحلي. احنا بنعرف انه اول شيء اول ما اجوا النازحين السوريين العيال استقبلتهم، البلديات فتحت دارة الملف، كله كان عم بيكون الضغط بشكل اولي على البلديات، بس البلديات ما تركوا لحالهم، كان في لجنة على صعيد مركزي لدعم البلديات وقدراتها وكمان دعمها تقنيا وحتى ماليا، اكيد هم بالشراكه مع المنظمات الدوليه. نحن بنعرف انه في عنا عجز، ما حدا بيخفى على حدا العجز القائم على الصعيد التمويل من ناحيه الدوله اللبنانيه، بس بدعم شركاء كثير وخاصه وبدعم منظمه الامم المتحده خاصه اليو واليو ان دي بي، قدرنا مع بعض نخلق مثل منتدى حواري نتناقش ونحط خطه اللي هي السي ار بي للاستجابه على هالازمه. وتعدت الخطه، مش هي خطه على الوراق، لكن في قنوات من الاتصال والتنسيق الدائم انخلقت عبر تنسيق مركزي وطني وتنسيق مراكزي حتى كمناطقي. حتى وزارة الشؤون كلفت وأسست لتعيين منسقين مناطقيين. من مهام المناطقي التنسيق مع البلديات في هالمنطقة ليبني هالحوار ويخلقوا التعامل والمناقشة على احتياجات المنطقة ويحددوا مع بعض أولويات التدخل واقتراح المشاريع لعرضها على الصعيد لجنة التقنية اللي ذكرتها بالكلمة بالأول لطرحها وأخذ موافقة من الوزارات المعنية خاصة وزارة الداخلية والبلديات وتأمين التمويل اللازم لدعم هذه المشاريع وتنفيذها. فنحن هذه التجربة صراحة عن جد تجربة فريدة ويبنى عليها. وهون شوي تخطينا إذا بدي أقول الرجيد تاعت البيروقراطية وقساوة القانون. بهالتجربة كان عنا أكثر مرونة كيف نقدر مع بعض نخلق آلية من التنسيق وآلية حتى من تسهيل تنفيذ هذه المشاريع وتمويلها.
Luca, go ahead.
Just to add, I think Suhair said it very well. I mean, this is actually a government response. The host community program is a national program, and it's one of the key component of the Lebanon crisis response plan. That is a joint UN and government strategy. So I think it actually responds to national priorities, the increased support to municipality and empowerment of municipality. Now, just want to make a comment about the decentralization. In Lebanon, at least, there is a lot that can be done with existing legal framework. There is a municipal law that attributes to municipalities certain responsibilities, and many times the decentralization happens as a result of the practice, and then the law follows the practice. Rather than the vice versa. The decentralization law normally happens when there is a sufficient citizen demand or realization that the municipality can play that role. I think it's interesting that what is happening now in Lebanon, and this crisis gives an opportunity for the municipality to take actually the responsibilities that are in the current law and other responsibilities that not necessarily are codified in any law. For example, there's another initiative that together with the Minister for Social Affairs we are promoting, which is how to link the municipality to other government entities at the territory, at the local level, in the area of health and education. How to put the municipality at the center of the provision of welfare services for the community, even if the welfare services are actually given by the Ministry of Education or Ministry of Social Affairs or Ministry of Health, but to have the municipality as the focal point for all these entities to actually look at what was said before. It's an area-based approach. So it is, and this is not written anywhere, and it's probably doesn't have to be written anywhere. It's actually a practice that happens, and the more it happens, then the more the citizen will demand that the municipality be given an additional responsibility. There is one fundamental critical factor that was mentioned before: the funding, the financial, the municipal funding. Let's say there sometimes not only in Lebanon, in many countries, the transfer of resources from the central government to the municipality is very irregular, very uneven, and it's politically motivated, etc. And it's interesting, one of the recent moves that the government has taken in Lebanon, as a result of a series of pressure even from the community, was to unlock some funding that were kept in an instrument called municipal fund. And so that there has been a transfer of funding to the municipality. And I think that's part of this changing way of doing business, the business. That could be that has to be promoted. I just want to mention that in terms of funding, the situation has radically changed compared to 2 years ago, when the response was mainly refugee center. It is now refugee and resilience. It is now Lebanon center, at least in Lebanon, I'm sure in Jordan as well. And funding for a non-humanitarian part, we call it in Lebanon stabilization part, resilience, has been has increased considerably. The program Suhair and I described is supported currently by 15 donors, and increasing funding is coming. Obviously, it's not enough. For example, we are able to cover only 50% of the vulnerable municipalities, and we have received. We are launching again the appeal in December, and we continue to insist that this investment in local in host community municipality is investment in stability, is investment in resilience. And it's serving both Lebanese and Syrians as well, because municipalities play a key role in the management also of the situation on the ground as regards to humanitarian assistance, because a lot of day-to-day decisions pass through the municipalities, and if the municipalities cooperate and municipalities are perceived as a provider of positive, constructive solution, then it creates a conducive environment also for the humanitarian assistance. Thank you.
Thanks, Luca. David?
Thank you. And just to add to this point, we're also finding that municipalities that have, or unions of municipalities in Lebanon that have benefited from the regional technical offices and improved capacity, as well as those who are also reaching out to the social development committees, as well as to local NGOs, and sort of demonstrating accountability as well as increased technical performance and coordination ability. They've been better able to attract funding from NGOs and from the UN and donors. Some of it has passed directly through the municipalities, and in other instances they've been able to coordinate the work of others. So we have definitely seen that link from that side.
Thanks. Any final comments from the floor? Yes. One last question over there.
فؤاد المحسن من الأردن، وزارة الزراعة. بدي أبدأ من السؤال اللي طرحه الأستاذ، المساهمة المحلية. الحقيقة في بداية النزوح السوري والنزوحات السابقة مباشرة استجابت الحكومة بمختلف وزاراتها. في المناطق قبل وصول المساعدات الدولية والمنظمات الدولية استجابت وزارة الصحة كمثال بفتح العيادات والمستشفيات الميدانية، استجابت وزارة التربية بفتح الصفوف المسائية وتوسيع الصفوف في مختلف المناطق، بالإضافة لكل الخدمات الأخرى اللي ممكن نتحدث عنها كبنية تحتية وكمساهمة، بالإضافة للمؤسسات الوطنية المحلية اللي ساهمت بمساعدة المهاجرين السوريين قبل وصول أي مساعدات أو منظمات دولية للأردن. الجزء المختلف في الحالة اللي بتحدث فيها إنه البلديات في الأردن لها حالة مختلفة. البلديات في الأردن تقدم خدمة بسيطة جدا متعلقة في النظافة والإدارة المحلية ضمن حدود معينة، لا تتعلق لا في الزراعة ولا في الصحة ولا في التربية، وبالتالي النظام اللامركزي اللي احنا بمراحله النهائية حاليا أقر من مجلس النواب ومجلس الأمة ورفع إلى جلالة الملك وأعادوا لإجراء بعض التعديلات عليه. في مثل هذه الحالة عند صدور هذا القانون ستكون المجلس المحلي، سموه المجلس المحلي لكل محافظة، هو من سيدير كل العمليات الحيوية ويكون له ميزانية خاصة لإدارتها على مستوى المحافظات لإدارة كل العمليات بما فيها مساعدة اللاجئين في مختلف المحافظات. شكرا.
Okay, thank you. Of course, it's impossible to summarize everything that has been done, but let me just highlight a couple of points that have struck me throughout this conversation. I think everyone recognizes that the municipalities have a very central role in dealing with the refugee crisis, in addition to their day jobs of delivering municipal services to their own populations. I think the dichotomy between refugees and host community is now becoming less pronounced in terms of the approaches coming from the international community. It doesn't mean that the social tensions are not there. As we heard, these are in many cases growing. but at least I think there is a movement in terms of the response, as Olivia was saying, more towards resilience programming, which is a little more area-based, a little less household-specific, looking at the needs in areas that are impacted by the crisis. We're also seeing that there are opportunities in this, due to the well-funded nature of this response, there are opportunities for transformational change that address some of the underlying issues, at least at an operational level. If we're not going to have a renewed discussion on decentralization, I think it would be the third for Jordan if it were to happen, or the fourth, then at least we can look at what are the operational areas. We heard some examples that the health sector and maybe even education can be areas where the municipal role can be defined. Solid waste, very clearly an issue in both countries, and actually within the current mandate of municipalities, where we could demonstrate that there's a new way of delivering those kinds of services. But that new way also has to include more citizen engagement in the planning processes. It has to result in a plan that is not simply presented by municipalities, but there is clear signs that there is a consultation process, that people are involved not only in creating the list of priorities, but then in monitoring the follow-up and the implementation. So while municipalities are at the center, they're not alone. The international community stands behind the government at all levels, and also the citizens in terms of contributing to the process. So I'd like to thank everybody from the panel and from the audience for a very interesting discussion. And I think we've just managed to keep time overall. So I'd like to thank everyone once again and look forward to seeing how the process unfolds in the coming years. Thank you very much.